Welcome back to Flip That Script, the podcast where transformation isn't just a concept, it's a revolution. I'm Holly.
I'm Dana.
And before we begin today, I just wanted to give a gentle but important note. Today's episode contains real and vulnerable conversations about unwanted sexual attention, harassment, and boundary violations. Some of the stories and language may be triggering or activating for listeners who've experienced similar situations. Please listen with care, pause if you need to, and come back when you're ready, and know that you're not alone. So today's episode is tender, it's fierce, it's raw, and it's been a long time coming. We're diving into something many of us have lived through silently: unwanted sexual attention from men. We're talking about the comments that weren't compliments, the messages that made our stomachs turn, and the energy that entered our space uninvited and perhaps even left a bruise on our spirits. We're talking about what it's like to walk through the world as a woman, constantly dodging the male gaze, even in healing spaces meant to be sacred. So today we're holding space for this conversation with a panel of powerful women, Casey and Kay, and we're naming the problem. We're sharing the pain, but we're also exploring solutions and how to reclaim our safety, our sovereignty, and our sacred space. If you've ever felt the sting of being reduced to your body or the fear of what might happen if you say no too directly, this episode is for you. You're not alone. You never were. And this space is for truth, healing, and a whole lot of reclaiming. Let's talk about it. Let's flip that script.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kay, and I've been in the world for almost 20 years. Before I say a word about today's topic, I want you to see me unfiltered, unmasked, and fully in my truth. This is what reclaiming my power looks like.
Before we dive back into our conversation, I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone whose presence has brought deep insight and steady strength to our space. Kay, thank you for being here with us. You bring a grounded wisdom shaped by over 20 years in the corporate world, and your unique experiences carry weight and value. Your voice matters deeply, and we are so grateful you've added your light to this conversation. We appreciate your input and look forward to the value that you'll be adding to this conversation. And now, while Casey is having a few technical difficulties and making her way back into the room, we couldn't keep going without honoring her presence and her power as well. Casey is the head collaborator over at Dark Goddess Collective, the brilliant creatrix behind Revolutions of a Witch, and a truth speaker who walks boldly between the worlds. With over 20 years of experience in the corporate realm, she brings both wisdom and fire into every space she enters. She is a seeker, a sacred disruptor, and someone who we are absolutely delighted to have joining us for today's conversation. So while the tech spirits sort themselves out, let's just hold space for her energy, because trust me, you're going to want to hear what both her and Kay have to say in today's episode.
So it's good to have you both here today. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me as well.
And let's just dive right into it because we all know that, unwanted sexual attention isn't about desire, it's about dominance, and it's just disguised as flattery. When women say no and a man ignores it, he's not confused. He's not dumb. He's just revealing what has been taught to him, that her boundaries are optional and that his wants are law. And the tragedy is that we were taught to make it sound like it's a compliment when it's really a warning. Every woman I know, we all carry our own stories, and, we've all that we didn't want. Stories that we never wanted, that we hold on to like the bad bruise. And some of us were taught to laugh it off. Some of us just breathe. And some of us still think, was it really that bad? Am I overreacting? Because that's what's going to be said to you. And if you even have to think that, you're not overreacting. If it if it doesn't make you feel good what they're saying, then it's not flattery. And we deserve to unleash this or unearth this. Okay. So, I mean, I have my own story. I have many. I'm going to pick this one for now. I used to drive, or I used to actually teach people to drive school buses. And I was a trainer. I did the class, and then we would go out in the bus. And I also did 3 certifications for our drivers every 4 years. They had to test, and I would test them. I had this one man, call him John. How about every man that we talk about now? His name will be John. We went to do his test, or his restart test, which equates to 3 hours alone in a bus with that person. So we went out and we did all we were driving, and we're going, I live in a rural town. There are lots of back roads. We ended up on this one back road, and he said he had to release his bladder. Okay. He had to go pee. And so we pulled off, and he gets out of the bus, and he went around the bus. I stayed in, and I'm sitting there. And as he gets back on the bus, he's like, and he's laughing. He's like, I was really nervous about doing this. He's like, I knew I had to do this today. And he's like, do you want to hear something funny? And I'm like, sure. What's funny, right? And he starts telling me that, he knew that he had to do this test the next day, and last night he was just thinking about it. So when he went to sleep, he had that on his mind, and apparently then he had a sex dream about me, and he just continues to tell me details about this sex dream as he's laughing that it's funny, right there on the bus seat. And he's like, isn't that funny? I'm like, yeah, that would only happen in your dreams, buddy. But I laughed about it. I didn't think it was funny. I laughed because what am I going to do? I'm out in the middle of nowhere with this man. What am I going to do? And his wife and his daughter both drive buses for us. I know his wife and his daughter. So if I go back there and I say, this man said this to me, what is going to happen?
They're not going to believe you. Or they're going to ask what you did. What did you do? Or maybe comment on something that you had on, or something that you said, and turn it into something that you did, as opposed to approaching the person who caused the harm and holding him accountable.
Exactly. And then maybe a week later, one of our coworkers, his wife passed away. And I went with one of my friends from work, and I had told her this story, right? And we go there, and this guy's there. Doesn't he pull her off to the side and tell her that he had a dream about her in a funeral home?
Like it's some sort of pickup line. Wow.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
So it's some sort of like sexual fantasy that he has.
Disgusting.
That maybe by saying this, he's saying it innocently. So if somebody does say anything, he can say, it was just a dream. Why is she making so much out of it? Further minimizing how women feel being sexually objectified. Knowing that this man is not having all of these sexual dreams at night while he's sleeping.
No, those were dreams that he was having at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah. It made me sick, really.
The wolf in sheep's clothing.
And
family.
I later found out this same man told our boss that he would do the extra work that she wanted him to if he'd send her nude pics. And she knew that he was like this, but it didn't even matter. We would have said anything.
Wow. So there were no boundaries set for him.
And this is someone who is going to drive a...
Wow.
Yeah. No consequences, no boundaries.
And I'm going to throw this out there that, he is driving children in a school bus.
Wow.
Right.
There's so much. There's so much out there, and it doesn't have an age. Because I'll tell you, when I was young, I had it a lot too.
Yep. Yeah.
I've had from the time I was old enough to have breasts, and that was pretty young.
Exactly. Men giving you attention that you should have never had
Mhm.
at such a young age, as if you grew them yourself to make men
Mhm.
look like you did it for them.
Right. I worked out. I got these.
It's not worth it.
You know, no,
But if you like grow up in an environment that
it's
is very
hard.
religious too, you would think that that would be a safe space. But for me growing up, whenever I was going through puberty and I started to develop, you had predatory men who were deacons, trustees, ministers who were making comments and offering, quid pro quo scenarios that involved alcohol just so that they could spend time with you. And this is in the church.
That's ridiculous.
So when we say that there's no safe space, there really isn't.
No, there really isn't. I've had teachers. I had a teacher give me his phone number
Wow.
when I was in high school. Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't like the end of the year, but still, he made it out like he wanted to keep it. It was my senior year. He made it out like he wanted to keep in touch because
Mhm.
we're friends. No, we're not friends, buddy. You were my teacher, and of course, I never called it, but the fact that he gave it to me was enough.
Yeah. I mean, there was a
How
And
dangerous is
very,
that?
very, because like as a parent, now that I'm a parent, I couldn't imagine sending my kid off to school thinking that, they're going to be safe and they're in the trusting
and
presence of the teachers and the faculty, only for the teachers and faculty to be predators.
exactly.
And this was a point I was making with Dana the other day is while it is not right for anyone, especially a teacher at school, to make advances to an underage student, if you ever look at the sentencing of a female teacher who has been intimate with a minor versus the male counterpart who has been intimate with a minor, who gets a slap on the hand, or the victim is blamed, and perhaps they're suspended with pay, nothing becomes of it, they transfer schools. But if you look at the sentencing of when women has done it, and I do believe this should be punished, especially there should be safety in the schools for students. They get 30 years in prison. And I'm not saying that's not a fitting sentence, but what about the male counterpart? Where is the accountability for the sexual advances from men
Yeah.
towards women, and especially
Yeah.
underage women?
There needs to be accountability.
There should be.
There needs to be.
But whenever we
Yeah, we can.
think about accountability, you know, let's just, we can't ignore how twisted our society is, because bringing up the scenario you brought up, Holly, whenever a woman does that, okay, the male response from all ages is like, wow, I wish this thing could happen to me. That would be so cool to have this hot teacher hitting on me,
Yeah.
into bed me. And that is like a universal reaction. Like I have never encountered a man or a boy who hasn't thought, oh my God, that would be the ultimate fantasy. That just goes to show you how disturbed our society is, because you're literally sanctioning pedophilia.
Yes.
You would think that you're safe when you're in a professional space as well. And we all know we're all in professional spaces online and we're in and all that. Like, I know Holly and I have talked about it with our hypnotherapy business. We get messages from men wanting to know if we take our clothes off in session, what part of hypnotherapy do they think that is? They don't. They just want us to take our clothes off. I've gotten straight up porn in my message box from men, like videos. And I was told that maybe I just needed a good, you can
You
throw,
need a good rock
yeah.
to adjust your attitude.
Mm.
The comments.
That's the treatment
The
for
comments.
hysteria.
Yes,
And all you can do is,
right?
report it and block it. Report it as much as you can. Get it out there. Let people know that this is something that happened.
Exactly. It is so underreported. It is so underreported, sexual harassment, sexual attention that you don't desire. And even though it feels as if many, many times that reporting it gets us nowhere, it's important to report so that people can really understand how often it happens.
It is important to report, but I think sometimes people are afraid because you don't know what the consequences of reporting it are going to be. Like, is this person going to,
Right.
lash out? And there's usually a power dynamic, like a power differential whenever you're dealing with these situations in a professional environment. So you have to worry about so many things. And I feel for women. I understand why they don't, because when they do, they're always punished in some way.
Yes.
Yeah. And you have to think, well, I need this job. You don't have to think that, but that's what you think. And that's what I've thought in the past. I need this job. What if they decide that I'm making this up and let me go? I have kids at home. I need the money.
Yeah. And as a personal side, as a personal story of my own in the corporate world, I I too have been there. And it's like we have a split second to make a decision. Because if we don't know whether or not that is going to end in violence either. And when I say violence, I think that there are so many other versions of violence that may not be taken into account. It's not just, and I say just, it's not that you're going to be raped. It's not that they can kill you, but there is a violence in knowing that you could lose your job. There is a violence in knowing that this person has power over your education, has power over your place of worship, has power over your health. And we see it even in legislative bodies as well. It is a violence against women. And that is a tale that is old as time. When we look at the myth and the story, like over 3,000 years ago, as Eleanor Hopper discusses in Off with Her Head, um, it discusses how even back when women were able to have power or were in power, they did many things to bring them down. Hatshepsut, Cleopatra, even back in like the epic Gilgamesh, to dehumanize and disempower women to otherize, right? And I want to make it clear just for myself and for others that I am nested in these systems that are still relevant and nothing's changed, right? This is still happening today. We're living proof. But it is important to know that when we have these conversations that there is a Black woman present. Kay, I am so glad that you're here. Because while we're discussing this now, we can't say that we didn't know that it's been going on forever, or that those that are with Black and brown bodies, especially Black women, have been the most impacted. Yes, right? Women were property of their husbands, but let's be real. You, Black women were properties of men long before us.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a really long time. Very, very big. And I want to say, I'm anti-racist. I want to say that, I'm all of those things, but I can't say that without also acknowledging that it will forever be a work in progress because I have no idea the experiences that you've had or the fact that you just have that experience and that is all ingrained in who you are. And it's really important that I bring that up because we also have to continuously call out the systems of patriarchy and misogyny that allow this same narrative to continue and mirror and reflect over and over again. We have things like Pandora and Eve, the first women. And notably, what's really funny about this is that both were either made by God or made from men,
Oh, yeah.
right? But the things that are happening or have happened, it is all around what it is that men want, men desire, and the length that they're going to go to really to get those things. And if we look at it, all of our teachers and educators that taught us or are teaching our children are using these same myths that were written by men who were misogynist and believing that they have power over women. So when I say there's definitely a power dynamic at play, there is. And if it's okay with you, I actually have a book that's called A Brief History of Misogyny, the World's Oldest Prejudice, and it's by Jack Holland. There is a portion in here called From Cato the Elder, discussing women rising up. Is it okay if I read this?
Sure.
Okay. If every married man had been concerned to ensure that his own wife looked up to him and respected his rightful position as her husband, we should not have half this trouble with women in that. Instead, women have become so powerful that our independence has been lost in our own homes and now being trampled and stamped underfoot in public. We failed to retrain them as individuals, and now they've combined to reduce us to our present panic. It made me blush to push my way through a positive regimen of women a few minutes ago in order to get here. He goes on to say, woman is a violent and uncontrolled animal. It's no good giving her the reins and expecting her not to kick over the traces. No, you've got to keep the reins firmly in your own hands. Suppose you allow them to acquire or to extort one right after another, and in the end achieve complete equality with men. Do you think you'll find them bearable? Nonsense. Once they've achieved equality, they will be your master.
And
So
that brings up so much, so
it,
much in that.
wow. And these are the things that have come down, right? These are the stories and the history that have created religion and Christianity. These are also the same things where we can look at that language of authorization and see how if we are less than human, if we are less than, then we are disempowered. And we have throughout history been brought down to this point where we are afraid to speak out because it does equal that type of violence for us throughout history. I'll even
I
go
think
so
the biggest point that I love that you brought this up is unwanted sexual attention in marriage.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, which is another story that I hold. And I think that there are going to be many women who hear this and say, me too. we wonder why it maybe takes so long to report, if we report at all, is because we don't understand what has happened. We don't understand that we have woken up in the middle of the night and there is someone that has invaded us, that has come into my body while I was sleeping and has taken from me. And for a long time, that was not against the law here.
Right.
Just feeling entitled, that sense of entitlement. And like for me, even just navigating random life responsibilities like the dishes or cooking, you're not safe, like it's not adorable or romantic to have somebody come up behind you and touch you or rub themselves against you while you're leaning into a hot stove to check on the food. Like there's nothing attractive or romantic about that. Like it's dangerous, number one. So like if you really cared about me and you really loved me, you wouldn't do that to me. You wouldn't put me in danger. But because your entitlements and your needs are primary, you did that without even thinking about what that could do to me.
It's very invasive and it's very selfish. It's all about their sexual need. It doesn't matter. It's like you're supposed to be hot and ready and stop and drop and let's go, right? And while as women, we can be that way
But
with our choice. Yes.
And again, that reminds me, I believe it was Morgan Fairchild who did a video where it talks about, again, all of these things that we should be, and they're all opposite at the same time, right? There's this, don't be too loud, don't dress too promiscuously, but be ready for him anytime. Like this was an amazing understanding of what women are the expectations of women by men, because men, that is the default, right? That is the default experience that is highlighted, pushed forward, deemed worthy, not that of women. And this unwanted sexual attention that keeps playing out over and over again, that keep, pulling pieces of us, what happens when we start to reclaim it. And based on what I read from Cato the Elder, we can see that there's a lot of fear of women having power. And I think, just to put it out there, the fear that is there and why they continue to do the things that they do, why they keep dehumanizing, why they keep pushing, why they keep taking, is because in the end, I think that they fear that we would do to them what they have done to us.
Well, honestly, I think that's why men are homophobic. A lot of men are homophobic because they know what men do. They know how men treat women, and so they don't want to be treated that way by other men. That's why they're scared. That's the issue.
It's a valid point.
But then, like, why can't they see, or maybe they can, but they refuse to see how this is invasive and a ultimate violation of a boundary? If you all don't mind me sharing some additional perspective on this topic, I want to talk about a situation I had in the workplace, because many of you have probably experienced this, but I want to take you on a journey in my skin. So imagine being in a corporate setting, and I'm young, I'm kind of naive. I was raised in a rural town. And I think that I believe in the stereotypes. The Waltons, Leave It to Beaver, this is how white families are. They're upstanding, you're safe, and I am in the workplace, and there is a man, and since we're using the name John, we'll call him John, who has a family, a wife, 2 kids. very highly respected manager within my organization. And I'm standing up, and at this point, I was kind of monitoring some new hires, and he just kind of walks up to me and stands next to me, and he told me how nice I looked. I didn't think of that as anything bad. I'm just like, oh, well, thank you. Thank you, John. And he couldn't leave it at that. He leveled up, and he told me that he had never been to the dark side before. So, first off, there's nothing appropriate or attractive or flattering about that, because not only did you sexually harass me in the workplace, you diminished me to some sort of exotic animal that you need to take down and tame. I'm nothing. I'm not even a woman that you could just be, oh, you look beautiful today, and leave it at that. Give me a compliment. But you conquer me. You colonize me. And,
Yeah.
it escalated. And I didn't say anything. I mean, what did you say? Because completely the facade of the Waltons and Leave It to Beaver, that just went away. But what do? He's a manager. He's highly respected. Nobody's going to believe you. But this is what happens when you allow that behavior to go unchecked. Because let's fast forward a couple weeks, months later, and we're at a fundraising event. And the venue was a bowling alley. And we're bowling and doing our thing. And this man, I'm bent over to get my bowling ball. And he comes up behind me and he touches me in the most inappropriate places. And yes, ladies, plural, places. And eventually the man was terminated, but he had to break into somebody's house and attempt to rape her. For that to happen, where he was terminated, he lost his job, the police got called, and he and his wife ended up divorcing. But this is what happens when you don't report. Whenever you don't give them boundaries, they continue to overstep and overstep and overstep. And that's what it can escalate to.
Here is the thing too, is I'm sitting here wondering, who saw him touch you at that bowling alley and said nothing?
My ex-boyfriend.
Who watched that incident?
Who was my boyfriend at the time. And it was his boss who did it. I mean, I'm not condoning this, but think about that. I mean, he controls the man's employment.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it happens. I know so many people think not in the corporate world anymore. You have immunity, but you do not have immunity. It does not matter if you work at the gas station. It doesn't matter if you don't work at all. It doesn't matter if you work as the top executive in one of the major corporations in America. You are not immune. There is not a woman immune to this behavior, even if you're not in the workplace. I'm going to share a story where I had a dear friend and her fiance, then become husband, thought it was cute to put his hands on my behind all the time. She thought it was funny and he was joking around and just thought it was cute. It was by far not cute at all. And it continued and continued. And she saw it, she knew it, and would just laugh at it. And it wasn't until the point that he did it, he would do it whether she was around or not, that he did it one day when she was not around, that I literally threatened him. And of course, then he tried to break the friendship up, said a lot of ugly things about me, because of course, he was the victim. I certainly wasn't the victim. So it can happen in any setting.
It absolutely can. That sends me back to Brett Kavanaugh, right? You can become a Supreme Court justice.
Become president.
You can become president. That's right. Because that type of masculinity that has been going on forever, that is rewarded.
Yes.
And it continues to be rewarded. And when we do fight back, we see others want to take. We see it with others that are Trump going after those who are pointing things out. We see that all the time. We see that women who are trying to stand up and do the right thing and are concerned about the bigger picture, we see it being pulled down. And at the same time, because we are so nested within this structure, women won't speak up for other women.
No, they won't.
Yes.
No, I have a story about that too. And like it kind of goes into both of what both of you were saying. When I first started driving the school bus, I was like 26 years old, you know, and I had to go get a physical. They sent me to their doctor. You had to go to this doctor, right? So I went in and the nurse took me into the room, gave me a gown, said I have to take all my clothes off, put this gown on. I'm thinking, for a school bus physical? What are they going to do? You know? So I did because you're at a doctor's. You don't think anything. It's a doctor, right? And I was very naive, you know? So I did. Took my clothes off, put the gown on. The gown, the strings in the back were missing. Okay. I couldn't tie it. So I just like overlapped it and sat on it. And then he came in and he did the, listen to my heart, did this and that and everything else. Then he wanted me to stand up and he wanted me to squat. And then he wanted me to bend over and touch my toes. Part of the physical. So I have this gown on. So when I went to bend over and touch my toes, I put my hand behind my back and I'm holding the gown together. And I'm just going to bend over with one hand, touch my toes. What's the difference, right? But he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, the gown doesn't have strings. It wouldn't tie. I couldn't close it. He goes, oh, here, I'll hold it for you. So he holds the gown for me. And he's like, go ahead. And I went to bend over and he dropped my gown. I'm completely bare, in front of him. I stood back. He's like, I'm sorry. I dropped it. He's like, go ahead. But I didn't get the whole way down. He wanted to see me get the whole. He's like, go ahead. I got it this time. Dropped it a second time. I was done. I was like, that's it. Why did I do it a second time? Why was I so stupid?
Because it's in a position of power, though. Like, you don't think that a doctor is going to do something like that.
Right.
Right. These are people in places and positions that are supposed to be trustworthy.
Yes.
Now, when I went back because I had to do this every year and I had to go to the same doctor. Went back the next year, the nurse come in, told me the same thing. But when I went back to the garage and I was telling them what happened, there were people that were like, we weren't told to take we didn't have to take our clothes off. The guys never had to take theirs. Why did I have to take mine off? So the next time I went for the physical, the nurse again tells me to take my clothes off, gives me this. And I was like, why do I have to take my clothes off? She's like, I don't know. I'm just supposed to tell you to.
So you're just enabling that. Like, you don't ask questions. You don't say anything. You're just gonna
right.
lead the sheep to the slaughter.
Exactly.
Right.
Like they knew they shouldn't. If I worked there, I would not allow that to happen.
And
right.
And so that's what
but we don't know what their job situation is.
Right. And again, that power over, right? Does she need that job? That is the wildest thing, is that we have that dynamic, but then over and over again throughout history, there was a book, Seven Deadly Sins, and the price women pay to be good. I'm gonna have a list of all of these resources and everything so everyone can see, but that one is by Elise Loden, and it goes through the history of pitting women against each other, especially when there is a adjacency to power. And again, that competitiveness, like, it can happen to you, but it won't happen to me because I'm adjacent to the power. And that is still at play even today, right? We're having this conversation because it is important to have this conversation. But why haven't we been having this conversation since, I don't know, the 1500s, 1600s? Why hasn't this been the conversation?
Right. Right.
Too many people are scared to speak out about it. Because when you speak out and speak up, then you become the perpetrator in the general public's eyes.
And why
It's
didn't
all
you do
about
something
It
sooner?
is. But you lost him his
yes. Why didn't you
job.
say something?
He
sooner?
lost his family because of you. It's your fault.
You
You
ruined his
enticed him. You had something revealing on, or you shouldn't have been there. And it's like it's never an accountability for them. Like nobody considers the harm they caused. It's the impact of the victim speaking out that society amplifies and says, oh, woe is me, woe is me. Like the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing that you brought up, Casey. Like, this is how their behavior ends up escalating because not only are you rewarding them, but you're validating them with your words. And it's not just men validating each other, it's women validating the men.
How many moms turn around and say, boys are just going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
boys?
Boys.
Yes. Yes. No accountability. But think about it this way. This is a crime. Every single one of these things, there are laws against. Now, if somebody come in and robbed a bank, how does that interview go with the bank? Does the detective come in and say, when's the last time you checked your alarm, sir? Are you sure it was working good? Did you really lock the door? I mean,
Have
is
your
there
money
anybody
left
else
out on the counter?
counter? Were you
Right.
enticing them to take it? That's
No.
not the way it works. But because of the power dynamics of women and men, it's how it works for us. And until people can understand that, nothing will change. People have to understand. You have a choice. If it's in a workplace, especially, how bad do I need this job? Am I going to lose my job because I spoke up out and against my boss? If I spoke up out against my coworker, who they adore and love, and perhaps is a great salesperson and is bringing them a lot of money, who's going to be the victim here?
Right.
Am I really the victim here in their eyes, or is he? Who's going to get sent away on some technicality because now you're the problem? You have caused a problem, and they have to deal with the problem.
But most of the time, I don't think that we're like consciously thinking that. Like I consciously think it now, but I now have lived experience. But back then, the societal conditioning, like we're socialized as women into this environment, I think, where we are being blamed. Like we blame ourselves. We blame ourselves. We're analyzing, what could I have done better? What could I have said differently? What could I, should I maybe have, not gone to this place, or maybe I shouldn't have been walking out late at night. Maybe I should have, had a chaperone. Like all of these things are running through our brains as to what we could have done to remove ourselves from the situation, because society has told us that there must be something that we did to bring this. We brought it on ourselves.
Right. Because we are not safe. And so we better figure out how to be safe. Something
Because
that men don't really have to think about.
No,
We raise our
because they're
daughters
to be afraid
to be afraid,
and to be
to
cautious.
carry their keys a certain way, to look around in the parking lot, to make sure
Always
no one's
be
following
aware.
you. Yes.
And
Instead of teaching, our fun.
are not just discussions that women should be having, but men should be having them too. They have daughters, they have mothers, they have sisters. They should be in on this conversation too. They should be aware. They should be better. They should do better.
Right.
And they should
But
encourage their male companions to do better and be better.
But isn't that always that they
Oh,
go
yeah.
to? I have a wife. I have daughters. They use them as a shield to protect them from their own bad behavior.
And it's crazy that they don't acknowledge
They do.
acknowledge that bad behavior. And that behavior is predatory. I'll never forget, like, after like leaving home and moving to the city, I just trying to commute from to and from work on the bus. And sometimes that commute would be during the day. Sometimes I would have to get back to my apartment. I would have to take the bus and be by myself at nighttime. And, I worked in an environment that was like a business professional attire. So, I would have to wear dresses and skirts and, whatever the case may be. And so there were times where guys would follow me home. They would try to talk to me, and you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, if you say hi, and I'm from a rural town, so we say hi to everybody. But I had to learn the hard way that if I say hi to you and I give you the attention, that gives you carte blanche to aggressively try to, push yourself on me. Okay. And whenever I don't comply or I don't show interest, things turn violent, whether that be verbal or physical. I had a guy put his hands around my neck because he's following me home, and he, trying to catcall me. And he's trying to get me to get his attention, or I wouldn't give him my attention. So as I'm walking across the intersection, he just like peels out and cuts me off, gets out of his car, has a bunch of choice 4-letter words to call me, and puts his hands around my neck. Like, I mean, I don't know. I didn't want him.
That had to be
It was.
terrifying.
For the rest of my life.
Snap out. They think she's crazy. When we finally had enough and we snap, we're hysterical.
Yeah, we are.
There's no reason for us to be acting that way.
The crazy part about it is I blamed myself. I did. I'm like, okay, well, my, I'm wearing this dress. Like, he was obviously attracted to me. Maybe I should have said hi. Maybe I should have, but that wasn't my fault. I was wearing perfectly appropriate attire, commuting to and from work, and he violated me.
Yeah. Hypnosis can help. It can help us to build boundaries and keep those boundaries and get our self-worth back and know that we don't have to accept what you're being dealt with you. And we're not here to bash every man. I'm not saying that every man is this way. But there are enough that every woman has had an experience.
Yeah.
We need to call in safe men to challenge other men, to stop the behavior. When they see it, speak out against it. When a woman confides in them and tells them that this has happened, to believe her. Because there is such a small percentage of what I'm sure we're going to hear, that women lie, men lie. Everyone lies, right? But it's such a small percentage that is also used to minimize our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And also, a lot of times as women, we will carry shame from these situations. And that's another way that hypnotherapy could come in and help with the releasing of the shame and rebuilding your trust in yourself, because it leaves you not trusting yourself, not trusting your intuition, processing that freeze, fight, flight response that you have during these situations when everything, as Casey and Kay have mentioned, is an instant decision. You're instantaneously having to make these decisions. And we need to be able to trust ourselves and to learn that we are worthy and we do not have to reciprocate anything that we don't want to, any unwanted attention.
And I have to say, like,
exactly. I mean, like, I was going to say, like, with my story in the beginning, man on the bus and his wife and his daughter worked with me. One of the main reasons I didn't report him was because I didn't want to hurt them. And I didn't want to have that
Yeah.
in my work environment be a situation. But you know what? I really wish that I would have anyway, because why is their comfort more important than mine?
Yeah. You bring up a valid opinion there.
That's what therapy can work with, can help.
Yes. It helped me on two fronts. First off, establishing boundaries in general. You know, not being able to, manage my work life responsibilities, being a mom, and just letting everybody encroach on my personal space. Because as women, that's what we're here for. We're here to provide care to the world. That's our main objective and the thing that we want to do for the rest of our lives. At least that's what society tells us. And, it helped me establish those boundaries. But it also helped heal me because I've dealt with a lot of trauma in my life. And, throughout this journey, I've thought about my old self in those situations. And like the person that I am now would never tolerate that. And like wanting to go back and just fight for myself and advocate for myself. And because I can't do that, I'm angry at myself. I'm holding all of this anger, hurt, trauma, violation, all of these emotions inside. And it's literally making me sick. And
But the fact that you're growing, I mean, you're growing, so that's good. You are rising up. And that's what we all need to do. So we can release that
yeah,
shame, release that guilt, release all of it. Because we know now what we're going to do in the future.
exactly.
And this isn't just about, it's not just about the sexual attention. It's about your power, your worth, the stories that we carry. And it's about reclaiming your energy, your time, your attention, because healing is sacred. Your no is holy, and your yes, that belongs to you. You get to decide. Only you get to decide when to say yes. And when we say no, no is a complete sentence. And taking that power back, and immediately when someone crosses that boundary, scream it to the world. Tell everyone you have the audacity to cross that line, put your hands on me, say unwanted sexual things to me. Then everybody
Yeah,
needs to know. Everyone needs to know that you're doing this. It doesn't matter if it's corporate, friendships, walking down the street. Everyone should know.
Agree. I agree with that. And I think that the more that we are telling our stories, the more that we share them, the more that we let the world know who we are authentically, the ways that we show up, the less divided we are. And you hear it. You hear the whispers. Me too. And that brings us together. That undividedness allows us to really push forward change because they want to keep us divided. They want to keep us silent. They want to keep us without power. And that's another reason why it's so important that we have these conversations because it breaks down those barriers so that I can see you and you and you. I see Kay, I see Dana, I see Holly. I understand and I can see the impact. And the more that we empower each other to speak up, our daughters speak up,
Yes.
our mom speak up, and we finally release all of this trauma that we have held from our ancestors down. And that's powerful.
And
It's very powerful.
I think there's so much more to say on this subject, but we're running out of time here. So if you want to have more of this conversation, you can join us for meditations in the morning, 8 Eastern, 7 Central.
Yes.
Link is on our Facebook page.
So if this episode stirred something inside of you, let it. Don't push it away. Your feelings are wise, your body knows, and healing starts with listening. And I just appreciate, and Dana does as well, so much, Kay and Casey, for being here with us, sharing your stories, bearing your soul, all of the great information. And we will have lots of information in the comments for everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you for having me too. It's very healing to be able to say these things out loud and not feel ashamed and not feel like I did something wrong. So thank you for giving me the space to do that.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing with everybody
You're
else.
welcome.
And if you're craving real transformation and sacred sisterhood, our retreat, She Reigns, Now Rise, is where the reclamation gets embodied. This October, we're gathering powerful women ready to rise, soar, and conquer what once tried to silence them. And this isn't just a retreat, it's a revolution draped in velvet and fire, and you're invited.
You'll find the meditation link and retreat info in the comments, plus ways to connect with us directly and with our guests. We love to hear what this episode brought up for you. We're all in this together.
So if you felt the power of today's episode, do us a favor, like it, share it, leave a comment, send it to the woman in your life who needs to know that she's not alone. And tag us at Flip That Script Podcast and let your voice join the chorus.
We are flipping that script, not just for us, but for every woman coming after us.
So until next time, honor your no, reclaim your power, and rise like the sovereign soul you are.